What's going on, everybody? My name is Aiden and welcome back to another video. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to be continuing our NBA draft prospects videos as we look at another guard, ladies and gentlemen, with, I guess, point forward potential. At least that's what the scouting reports are saying. Today, I want to talk about Kyshawn George, ladies and gentlemen. But before we get any further, if you liked the video and you want to see more from me, drop a like, drop a follow, and or subscribe if you are new, and let me know in the comments below your thoughts about the Chicago Bulls and Kyshawn George, and do you think that he could be a Chicago Bulls player in this upcoming NBA draft? Now, I kind of mentioned the point forward situation. Well, according to the ESPN website, at least he is listed as a guard, but in other places, he is listed as a forward. So that's probably why there is comparisons in that regard. Nevertheless, he's a 6'8" guard. According to ESPN, weighing 205 pounds and only 20 years of age. Now, you might look at this and say, well, that could be something that's very interesting, at least. Something to take a look at, if anything. But also, with that being said, the stats don't necessarily look that great, and we need to talk about that a little bit more as well. So he averages around 7.6 points per game, 3 rebounds per game, 2.2 assists per game, shooting 42.6% from the field and 40% from the three-point line, which is rather decent. So, to me, instantly, I look at 6'8", I look at a guard that's 6'8", I look at point forward comparisons, and I get very intrigued in the player. And there is a lot to like when you hear those things. Now, you might look at those stats and you might be asking yourself, why are those stats rather low, considering the fact that, you know, there's a lot to like about just a point forward. There's a lot to like about a player that has potential to be a 6'8" point guard and stuff of that nature. And although I can completely understand where you're coming from, very similar to the last video I made, it's with Castle. It's 1 year in college. I mean, look, if he spent another year in college, those numbers will improve. And if he spent 3 years in college, those numbers are going to improve again. It's the fact that they're one-and-done players. Now, that doesn't necessarily reflect on everybody. There have been loads of one-and-done players that absolutely destroy the college game, take it with their, the grasp, and never let it go. And, those players get pretty much picked in the lottery for the NBA draft in most years. Simple as that, really. But a lot of one-and-done players, most of them, I would say, don't have those dominating, I guess, moments in college, and it is as simple as that. So, of course, if he spent a couple more years in college, you would see better stats, and therefore a lot more people would probably be looking at him at this point in time. With that being said, though, that's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a player that's entered the NBA draft this season, so we need to discuss whether or not he's good enough for the Bulls at this point in time. So, speaking of, what are the strengths to Kyshawn George? Well, I guess the biggest thing here, for me at least, is that people do consider him a point forward. At his very best, if he can develop at the very best of his game, you're going to get someone that's a very good shooter. You're going to get someone that can play make. You're going to get someone that can defend. You're going to get a jack-of-all-trades type of player. And that is something that very much is intriguing, at least for me, with the Chicago Bulls team. Very versatile. He's 6'8". So not only can he play those guard positions, you could also move him to the forward positions. And at 6'8", you could even chuck him in the power forward position if need be. So you're getting a player that can play 4 out of the 5 positions that this Bulls team might need him to play. I don't see that as a terrible thing whatsoever. And especially with the way he's able to spread the floor, as he is a very good spot-up shooter. He's shooting 40% from the three-point line on 4.2 attempts per game, basically making around 1.7 of the threes that he's taking per game with the 4.2 attempts. That is a pretty nice return, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, you're hoping that can only increase at the NBA level with more time and, of course, shooting coaches and everything in between that this Bulls team and the NBA has to offer. So you're expecting all those things to get better over time, which is only natural, ladies and gentlemen. He's a willing passer, and his upside is very unique. Those are those big strengths that I have for him. Again, a willing passer. you know, it's something that I think most players are. There's not many players out here that I can sit and say they're selfish players or that they don't want to pass the ball or that they're not team players. Yeah, sure, there are some of them out there, but most players tend to be willing passers, want to play a team game, and be part of a system where they can thrive in. Ultimately, Kyshawn George, in my opinion, is one of those players that can fit into that category. Well, let's look at the weaknesses, because there has to be some weaknesses at least. He's very much unproven. The 1 year in college, to get comparisons to players like Joe Ingles, for example, and to be listed as a point forward in the NBA, that is a hard position to play. There are very few point forwards in this league. It is a very difficult role to play. It's a hard measurement to live up to. So that's a big weakness to me. Yeah, sure, he can be listed as a point forward in terms of the college level. Will that be able to translate over to the NBA level? That is something that I very much do not know, but I'm very intrigued to find out. So we'll have to wait and see. We talked about being a jack of all trades type of player when you're good at a lot of things, but you don't excel. You're not elite at anything. I do kind of see a little bit of that in this player as well. Yes, he's a good three-point shooter. He's a good passer. He's a good defender. He's a good team player. All fantastic things, right? But what does he truly excel at? Is he an amazing shooter? Well, 40% from three is a pretty nice return. I wouldn't say that's an elite shooter or an amazing shooter. Playmaking-wise, he averages around 2.9 assists, I think it was. Not the most amazing playmaking player you'll see. He's a good defender, but he's definitely not an elite defender. And you get the idea. So if you're looking for someone that's going to make an instant impact, change this team dramatically from the inside out, be the cornerstone piece to the Chicago Bulls, you kind of need someone that needs to excel in something. And I don't necessarily see that in Kyshawn George at this point in time. But he's very unproven. Big part of the weaknesses category is very unproven talent. So there could still be something there that we don't know or we don't see yet that the Bulls might be able to see. So keep your eyes on that one, ladies and gentlemen. And another thing that I have, he's not necessarily the most athletic player at 6'8". So when I mentioned he could play in the power forward positions, I think it would be in only a unique circumstance. I wouldn't put him there as the starting power forward each and every single game, but in a unique circumstance, maybe for when you need a really good three-point shooting team that can spread the floor as much as possible, you might be able to chuck Kyshawn George there every now and then at the power forward position. And he's not necessarily the best shot creator for himself. He doesn't necessarily, at least from my point of view, look like the type of guy that's going to beat someone off the dribble every possession and shoot a mid-range, isolate, or drive to the rim every single possession. Stuff of that nature. I see it on occasion. It's from the highlight videos. But the majority of his shots come from the three-point line. The majority of his shots come from the catch and shoot. The majority of his shots come when they're wide open. So I wouldn't necessarily say that he is going to be a guy that can create his own shot. But look, we've got DeMar DeRozan on this team, assuming he is staying. We've got Kobe White on this team. We've got a bunch of guys that can create their own shot, at least from the mid-range in. I don't necessarily think we need another one of those, but that's just me. So with that being said, the positives and the negatives and everything in between, would you take Kyshawn George with the 11th overall pick? Well, there is a lot of mock drafts suggesting he's actually going to go in the second round. Considering the stats that we are seeing, considering the unprovenness of his game, it makes a lot of sense that he's projected to go in the second round. But there was a mock draft that did actually link us to him with the 11th overall pick, and that is why I'm talking about this player today. But my honest answer on this situation is, I personally think it's too much of a risk with the 11th overall pick. Again, we need a player that we know can make the difference. It's almost like selecting Dalen Terry, for example, with the 18th overall pick. He's a project player, something that we desperately need to work on. And if you're going to get Kyshawn George with the 11th overall pick, it's very similar. There's potential there. There's raw potential there. There's upside there to the moon and back. But it's someone that you can't guarantee that will make an instant impact as soon as he steps foot to the Bulls. At his best, he can be that point forward that we're describing. At his worst, he's a very good spot-up shooter that can play the wing positions, which is why If the Bulls move into the second round, if they could get a second round pick via trade or anything in between, I would take a serious look if he actually does fall into the second round. Because that is a player, at his worst, could be a three-point shooter, at his best could be a point forward. I don't really want to refute that at this point in time, with the second round pick, of course. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay tuned for more. Take care, and peace.